For those of you who managed to get this far, well done for persevering. I know it's not easy. And from this point, it's a question of inserting the servos in the correct order and also adding some of the wrist details. There are 4 pulleys for the wrist, 2 on top and 2 hidden down inside the structure. And this one, in fact, one goes in there, one goes in there. Also, all of the wires have to be accommodated, which means you have to start at the front and work your way backwards. These are the long tendons for the fingers, and these are the tunnels which will take the thumb tendons. Now, the way I tend to set this up is I put the 4 finger servos up here, which are these 4 here, the 4 thumb servos back here, and the 2 wrist servos go in the middle, in fact. There are also 3 inserts which have to be placed in. And this is so that the servos can be assembled and at some point also disassembled if you need to do any servicing. That ends up sitting like that. And this first one goes down there. And you can see there's a hole to screw it from the side, and there's another hole to screw it in that way. Starting with the 4 servos, which are going to pull the long tendons of the finger. You'll find in the STL files this shape here. These bond on, or if you prefer, you can screw, but bonding should be fine, and then trim them to size. And you want them done so that there's a little hole on that side, and that will pick up the long tendons. The way you set them up is exactly the same as the fingers, so I'm not going to show that now. But the order in which they go is determined by which is underneath. You also have to release the wrist joint, and I've made a little tool and uploaded the STL file, which is that, and that will allow you to grab hold of a nut which holds this all together. So first of all, unscrew the M3 proximal pitch joint and pull that out, because that will allow this to open up. You're going to need a flathead screwdriver, and when you push that into there, you can open up the forearm bulk. These servo cables need to be gathered up neatly as always, and they will pass in the groove, which is in the sidewall. And so, screwdriver, just make sure that everything is neatly tucked down in there. With another screwdriver, open that up. This cable starts like that, so you can pass it down. Oh, right, now, so what you're going to find is that on this CAD, I have not included these little cutouts, which I tried to do by hand, but in fact it's a real pain. So for now, I'm just going to cut these PTFE tubes flush, because the servo has to go down right next to them. I don't think it's a big deal. In fact, if it all done as correctly, it shouldn't be at all possible for these tendons to hit those servos. But nonetheless, I will change it on the CAD. For now, though, if you've assembled this one, you're just going to have to keep going. So just cut those off. Flush. You also have to loosen off the wrist mechanism, or rather the wrist figure 8 ligament. Pull that up to one side. Actually, that's got there. Okay. So sure your wires are neat. Lever open the forearm with that servo wired downwards. You can engage it like so, and then also pull it into that side channel. And that will go down flush like so. Exactly the same on the other side. Gather up those servo cables. Make sure they won't get trapped underneath. Screw it down there to open it up. And with a little bit of wiggling, that will go down there. Okay, so looking at that, in fact, I would say you do want to trim that one. So on this side, don't know if you can see in there, this tendon here, you can see it clearly. This one will be slightly obscured even once they're screwed down. So we're going to trim that off. So I'm just going to trim off that corner. And put it back in. And now when they are both screwed down, you can see the tendon will emerge from there and the tendon will emerge from there. Okay. And at that point you can also retie the wrist ligament. Doesn't have to be done super tight at this point, just make sure. Those are the front two. The next two are going to be the same. What I just want to check is where all of these servo wires end up. So then, once those are in, you can attach the long tendons exactly the same way as you did in the fingers. I'm not going to show that here again because it's going to take too long. So I'm going to look at the old one, take it to pieces, and I'll give you an idea of how the other one's going to go back together. So these are the top two inserts. And as you can see, in order for that to be fitted, that wire wraps around like that. And this wrist tendon passes through a hole there. It also has a slightly different bearing design, because on this one it's now going to take a 6mm bearing, whereas I just took one large circular. Different designs. The way that the wrist runs, in fact, is that there are 4 pulleys. These are the pulleys which get pushed down into these gaps. There's one there, and there's one there, and that takes the line as it comes in, turns that corner. And then on the top there are 2 more, and that allows these wrist pulleys to cause a cross, or rather to allow the tendon to cross over. And in that way, a single tendon runs all the way up, passes through the little finger in the same way as the figure 8 ligament does in the middle, goes around here, one comes up from underneath, one goes across and round here into the 4-finger palm section, passes up through there, back out, locked off here, again same as the figure 8, back down, the cross in both of them of course, to keep the geometry correct, and then that one ends up, yes, coming through here, that goes around this corner and comes up to there, and then the ends can be terminated. So there's a single line, which is, well, it's how it's done. There's always better ways of doing almost all of it. But for now, we're just going to dig down so we can have a look at what's in here. On this particular version, I've used serial servos for the wrist because they are both larger and they have a greater turning range. There is room to fit the Emacs and any standard micro servo up to 12mm thick, so I would consider using something different there. But for now, just get it running. You can just use the ones you already got. Alright, so this one is screwed on from the back. You can pass that screwdriver through that gap in the insert. And then this is when you want to have your long-handled screwdriver handy. So indeed, very useful, because it'll also give you access through these holes in the back to tighten things up. This is a P0, a number 0 Phillips, and the shaft is under 3mm thick. Because often they are a little bit bigger. So it's nice if it's under 3, but not the end of the world. And that just makes it easier to access some of these screw heads. Oops. Watch out for falling screws. I release the tension in my wrist, this servo can now be lifted up, and you can see that you have to have some overlap of line. It doesn't have to be a huge amount, but this servo will turn like that, and so it mustn't run out of line. Some overlapping when it's in position. All the way around to there, in fact. So about 270 degrees of overlap. This cable which comes in the top It's going all the way around to that side. And this one which comes in the bottom is coming up to here. And that also allows us to see where the cables go. You can just see them here, disappearing underneath. It can be quite handy when you're unscrewing these. A pair of tweezers. And to access this screw head, it's necessary to drill a hole in that servo horn. So there you can see there's a hole. There's a hole through the wrist spool, which I've just added by hand with a drill, and then that way you can access that screw head. If you really feel the need to screw it in two places, it's probably fine not to do so. And then this one can also come up. Of course, the problem with all of this is that so many of the systems are intertwined, but as you undo anything, you have to do lots of things. But that's just the way it is. These things are complicated. And I hope it's not too much of a surprise that a robot hand is complicated. And there you can see on this one, the tendon is simply passed through one of the main holes and then clamped off with the same servo screw which holds the horn in place. Okay, so now we can start to see a bit deeper down. This is one of the thumb servos. Again, you can see the wires wrapped on top, but underneath you can see all the other wires passing down in there. The way to set up the thumb tendons is to get the servo in the correct position, and then set up the lines to the thumb to be in the right place you want, tighten them off, and then put the servo into position. Okay, so on this hand, that means that all of these servo wires can be bundled up, and they want to pass through that tunnel there and out through this square hole here. So they will emerge from here. This is the compartment for batteries and electronics. And these servo cables pass underneath this servo. So they pass through this tunnel here, and then across this gap and down, and also out through the square. And as always, make sure they're all nice and neat. Now, Now, if, as with this one, it's a bit of a problem keeping that one in position, it's probably not a bad idea to add the wrist tendon. It's going to be our standard dyneema. Okay, needs to pass it down like that. Put a bit of bend on it. As this pulley here will block access to the screws which secure this servo and which lock off the servo horn, for now you just need to make sure that the tendon is passed through the hole and keeping that PTFE in position, but don't actually add the pulley yet. The pulley is very simple. There's an outer printed piece. There's one of the same bearings using the fingers, 6mm, 10mm, 3mm, and there's a little center column which stands up. When you press it all together, you get something which looks like that. Might take a little bit of messing around, and very importantly, make sure that the center hole is clear on an M3. If you can't move it with your fingers, it's going to be annoying because it's going to get stuck. So there's a small interference to cut out here for using the old CAD files. Just trim that off. Not sure where that's fair. Shouldn't be. It'll stop that servo sitting down into position properly. So just make sure that's cleaned out nicely. And then, having threaded the wires for these two servos, in the second row, it's the left-hand side which goes in first. Make sure you know where the other end of your wire is so you can pull it through. Tuck it underneath. Just pull it to the side so it doesn't get trapped underneath. And if necessary, spread this out a little. There's quite a wide gap under there. Then make sure that that pushes down completely. Same on this side, thread that wire through. Make sure you're putting on the right one. Pull these wires more to the side on this one, I think. Not so much underneath. Make sure everything pushes down nice and neatly. And then you can attach. You can attach the long tendons to the servo horns, same as in the fingers. Trim these lines to length, attach your servo horns, get the position, attach everything. That'll be the fingers done. Okay, I'm just going to do an overview of what happens next rather than actually show it because that's going to take too long. Those four are in. Make sure all of his cables are lying reasonably flat. And then you can see, watching out for wires always, that there are holes that will allow a screwdriver to pass all the way down, tighten up the main servo horn, and tighten the screws which secure the tabs to the structure. And on this side, the servo fits in like this, with the wire wrapped over the top. Drops down like that, and here you can access servo horn screw, and you can screw the tabs from behind to secure that servo there and there. So once that servo is in and you're happy with the length of the tendon, which goes off to the thumb through there, so in fact you do this one first, because you can access the screws from over here. Once that one is in, you can do this one. With the cable wrapping over the top. That servo down there. You then have to add this insert by putting a hot insert into there, a hot brass insert into there. One of these and then two. That's actually pretty secure. There is space to put another one, which I have done here. And there's also, in fact, one which comes up from underneath. Which comes into here. You can then add two more servos here for the wrist, and then this pulley is going to be screwed with an M3 countersunk, and the length is 19. So there's just a nut which holds that in place. Terminate the wires as described earlier, one wrapped like that, and the two ends terminated on that one. And then the last step for the last two servos is with these inserts. The wrist tendon passes through that hole, off round the pulley out to there. And on this one, the servo actually screws to this piece. Like so. And it drives another one of the thumb tendons. As for the thumb itself, it's held on with one elastic on the back, and then these two knuckle equivalents, and a rotator which crosses all the way across the back. But in many ways I'd encourage you to experiment with exactly how you attach these. Oh sorry, and a fourth one which comes up the middle and passes through the mounted basal joint into the centre of the thumb and onto the tip. So that's for one string which is already fitted. It doesn't particularly matter which of the four servos back here you attach it to. And again, you can experiment a bit. That's how it's done. I will try and find the time to do a more detailed explanation, but I know some of you are waiting, and that's what I can do quickly. I hope it helps. Any questions, stick them in the comments, make your own video, upload them, show me where you get stuck, and I'll try and help. Good luck.